appreciative and less just enthusiastic about the thing.
Okay.
You know, always scrutiny, 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 scrutiny,
Yeah.
and you think, well, did you get into it so you could scrutinize it, or
Uh-huh.
did you get into it because you go, oh, I like that. I think I'd like to have more of that in my life.
Right.
I'd like to do
Right.
something like that one day.
Okay.
Not to think, oh, I'd like to joylessly plod along with it. So I like talking to people who are.
This is
It reinforces that in me when I talk to people who are non-technicians.
sure. Well, good. Or then we're in good company.
Always.
Okay.
Always.
Okay. All
Always.
right. All right.
You were trying to get my attention.
Just let's get started.
Let's do it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Let's get started.
Are we rolling?
Okay, we're rolling. Good. All right.
Much appreciated.
Intro.
Sure. Right. Act natural. I'll do my best. So I'm really interested to talk to you. When we went through your list of hobbies, I thought it could really be fun for us to sit down and talk about music at length. And I know that you prepared some things as well. I guess my first question to you would really be about. I mean, we could start at a number of places, sure. But I think a good starting point to have some semblance of chronological order is just, you mentioned that your dad was a big fan of opera, Italian opera, specifically growing up.
Right.
And I just think about the earliest influences you had in the home,
Okay.
what you were listening to when it wasn't your choice of what to listen to, and what you liked, what you didn't like, all that kind of
Okay.
that kind of thing.
Well, that's wonderful because it was my dad's influence listening to opera got me excited about opera. But then, by the same token, he was not involved in classical music at all. Just Italian opera, which is what he grew up with. And of course, he knew the language, he knew the performers. He had met some of them, he had corresponded, he had photographs as a fan, he would get photographs from some of the Italian famous opera singers. And so that was my background. But at age 14, and I remember this very distinctly, in high school, I started to listen to classical music station. Perhaps it was KK, HI or KKPI or something of that sort. It's probably long gone, but they played outstanding classical music. So I thought, boy, this is really exciting. So I taught myself to appreciate what was available on the radio, and I really enjoyed it a great deal.
Can you give me an example of some of the composers or the
yeah.
general era of music that was dominant?
Sure, okay. Primarily, they would play a lot of Baroque and a lot of romantic music, and they were really heavy into Mozart and Beethoven. And I still find those two fellows to be my favorites.
That's right.
By far. But I've also learned to appreciate so many other classical composers. One thing stands out at age 14. After I listened to the radio, and became really involved with looking forward to what was going to be the following evening, what they were showcasing. So I could stop homework and listen. Somebody gave me an album which was 50 best moments in classical music. And so we had 50 composers, snippets of some of their favorite pieces, creations, and I would get hooked on certain individual composers just from that little sampling. And I still have that record. I was looking for it today, but couldn't get it in time. But it was instrumental
So to speak.
molding my further interest. And so I missed that.
You said he was instrumental, and she said, so to speak.
Oh, all right. Okay, you caught that.
We assume the puns are intended.
Yes.
Safe assumption, I imagine.
Well, that one escaped me, but normally I try to provide.
We're the outfielders if the ball leaves the infield.
Okay.
Yeah.
So that record led to more listening, and eventually I formulated a list, and this is pretty representative of the list. Shall we just go over it real quick?
Sure, I'd love to.
Okay.
Yeah, this will be very informative.
And you may know the pieces. Here's the
I do.
Here's
Yeah,
the
I'd love-
drawback.
yeah.
Oh, here's the drawback. The drawback is I don't know if I mention one particular thing, if I could never duplicate what that movement is or what that opening few bars of it. I couldn't tell you at all, but when I hear it, I can recognize it.
Sure.
So when I mention these now, they're ones that I know I really like. So just simply going through them, we're starting with Mozart,
Mm-hmm.
and it's a divertimento in D major.
Mm-hmm.
You know that?
I do.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
The second would be Gustav Holst,
Mm-hmm.
who wrote The Planets.
Right, right.
And this is St. Paul's Suite.
Mm-hmm.
Beautiful piece. Next would be Beethoven's Piano Concerto Number 3,
Okay.
the Violin Concerto in D,
Mm-hmm.
and the Emperor and the Pastoral,
Mm-hmm.
which are again these are the top of the list. I put Beethoven at the top of the list all the time. Every time there is a contest on one of the classical music channels, people write in and they'll give their 100 best, and usually Beethoven and Mozart lead the list because they should, and Bach.
They should.
Yeah, they should.
Fascinating.
In other words, they're that good.
Of course. Yeah. Well, tell me what it is about Beethoven versus Mozart that you like about him.
Okay. Those two fellas?
What do you think is like if you were a real estate agent and there was the Beethoven bungalow and the Mozart mansion and you had to sell me on each of them?
Okay.
And I had the money to buy both of them. How would you sell me on those?
I would try to get you to buy both.
Right.
So you corner the market.
But how would you sell them to me? What would you?
I see.
Yeah.
I tell you, the Mozart mansion has some of the finest music that you'll ever hear. It's music that's going to make you very happy. It's music that's going to make you very calm. It's soothing and it's wonderfully written. On the other hand, the Beethoven Bungalow is also extremely exceptional, but it's for someone, it's a home for someone who likes bombastic, larger-than-life sound, world-shattering musical concepts. So they're very different and yet very excellent in their own right. And, so I can say that I would vouch for either home would be value.
Right.
What do you like? Do you like bombastic, exciting music that's going to move you and shake you, or do you want to be serene, calmed, and allowed to feel your soul? So it's hard to find anything that you could say about either one that would be a detraction for me.
Right. Well, because when I think of Mozart, I think about if you watch a hummingbird flying around and the ability for a melody to move in any direction. And if you actually look at every little decision he's making, from maybe 2 or 3 notes at a time, you see that none of these are obvious decisions. Sometimes they go, you know how a hummingbird can go, joop, joop, joop,
Yeah.
and it's not in a straight line, but there's a continuity of motion. It's still the same hummingbird moving, but it's moving in ways, and it's the same trajectory of the thing. But if you look at every little movement it's making, none of those are obvious conclusions from the previous one at all. If you look at the whole thing as an aggregate, it seems like it makes perfect sense.
Yeah.
But you go, why did he do that?
Right.
Why was that the peak of the melody? Why was that where he did a little... And there's it's so fluid that he can just go so fast anywhere he wants, and it always makes sense.
All right.
And Beethoven is like, you take this one teeny tiny idea, and little by little, you basically explore every possible implication of that one tiny idea until you have an entire, basically like an entire edifice from just this little seed in the ground.
Well, when you look at this list, I mentioned earlier that I could not replicate, to give you an example of what a piece sounds like. You can do that with most of these?
Most of these, yeah. I mean, if I know the piece, it's already there in my head.
Okay.
Yeah.
Do you know Telemann's Concerto in B flat?
You know, I was never a big Telemann guy. That's Baroque, isn't it, I think?
Yeah.
Okay. Baroque for me was mostly like the Bach violin pieces. I never got so into the sound of a harpsichord. I think it was sort of an obstacle. There's something about it. Some people hate the sound of the sitar, for example. They think it sounds like tinny. And for me, the harpsichord, for me, I have that sort of reaction. It sounds like marzipan.
Well, artificial in a way.
It doesn't feel warm, and it doesn't have warmth and depth and resonance. It has ding, ding, ding.
I understand.
Like the car alarm of the 16 whatever.
Okay.
Yeah.
I like that. A good analogy.
So can we continue
corn
going
gold.
down the list? Is
Yeah.
that, I think, yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, sorry.
I'll do less
Oh, yeah.
editorial.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Corn Gold, the Violin Concerto, Opus 35. Is that one that comes to mind?
That's not something I'm familiar with.
Okay. And you may want to look at these.
I'd be very interested in looking at them.
Yeah. Corn Gold was a composer who found enormous success in America, getting involved with movie soundtracks, and really became very well known at doing that. But I think his serious composing was far better. I mean, not that the movies weren't serious, but I mean his real important work.
Got it.
This exemplifies that. Chopin, almost anything, particularly the etudes, the preludes, and the nocturnes, just very moving. I especially like to listen to Chopin when I'm lifting weights.
Interesting. I would assume Beethoven.
Well, Beethoven, yeah, but then I get really worked up.
I see. It's almost too much, right?
I may take those 50-pound barbells and think I can do them, because it's the Ninth Symphony.
Right.
But no, Chopin, there's a fluidity, a movement that works for me.
Yeah.
Now I got Leslie lifting weights, and we do this
Cool.
at about maybe 11:30 at night, as a prelude to watching a serious movie.
Oh, I love it.
A day in the life.
And then of course, before we listen to Chopin, I have to have peanuts, almonds, and walnuts, which is my special mix. And so I eat those. I'm fortified. And I'm ready to work out. So we move on to Max Bruch.
Okay. Yeah.
Max Bruch. Whoa.
Yeah.
He'll really sneak up on you. Dynamite music,
Yeah.
violent concerto.
Yeah.
Can you do
No, I don't have that one ready
Okay,
to go.
okay.
Yeah. I mean, some of them I do, some of them I don't. I wouldn't want that to be, let's say,
All
a
right,
feature of the.
But I envy you that, because I wish I could sit here and tell you what that sounds like to me.
Yeah.
Okay, Albagnones. Tommaso Albagnone's Adagio for strings.
Yeah.
Very languorous, very soothing, sad, pensive, really wondrous. Then we go to Bach, the Goldberg Variations
Oh, yeah.
with Glenn Gould.
Yeah.
As crazy
Yeah.
as he was, magnificent interpretations.
Yeah.
And I have some of the recordings.
Do you? Yeah.
And also Van Cliburn.
Okay.
Doing some.
Yeah.
You remind me a little of Van Cliburn. You don't really look like him for some reason.
Is that right?
I've thought about Van Cliburn. Maybe when I first met you. There's no way of explaining it. Does that make sense?
Well, I don't know Clyburn. So
Okay.
now I'd be especially interested.
Oh yeah.
Is it anything like the schizophrenic gentleman behind us?
Not that intense.
Good.
No, not that intense.
Is that
but
the soloist?
accomplished.
Or what was it called?
Accomplished.
A pianist you're talking about? Clyburn?
He's a pianist, yeah.
Okay, yeah.
And he won one of the Russian competitions. Young man, American. He goes there and does this fantastic rendition.
I'll tell you this by the compliment.
Yeah.
I don't mind if I do.
Yeah. All right. Antoine Dvorak.
Oh yeah.
Okay. Now there's an opera. It's not one of Leslie's, but we are particularly fond of it. It's called Rusalka.
Okay.
Rusalka is about a maiden that sings to the moon, and there is one particular point, an aria in the opera where it's song to the moon. Very evocative, very provocative, exciting. When they do it on stage, they have water maidens swimming, and she comes out of the ocean and sings to the moon, and it's just overwhelming fantasy aspect.
I imagine that must have been really challenging for the audiences at the time.
Yeah.
I mean, there is some stuff in Italian opera that is a bit, well, obviously it's theatrical.
Yeah.
Sometimes it's, by those standards, licentious.
Yeah.
But and even like the Queen of the Night and that kind of thing.
Sure.
But I think the Russians really pushed that envelope farther than than the Western European counterparts.
Sure. Yes.
Yeah.
We did. Now, Dvorak is actually Czech, but he lived for a time, or he worked with Russians.
Yeah, yeah.
The next one is Maurice Ravel, one of your favorites.
Oh, yeah.
And the Pavane for a Dead Princess. Years ago, I was going to make a film. One of my students, red-haired young girl, very beautiful. We went to the Japanese tea garden, and I filmed her kind of waltzing around the tea garden, sipping tea, and then I was going to have the Pavane.
It's a beautiful piece, yeah.
It never materialized somehow, and then we lost touch. But at the time, I was really sure this would be a fabulous snippet. This particular, the face of this particular girl, the red hair, and the fact that there's kind of a dirge for this beautiful.
Yeah, it's very heartbreaking music.
Yeah. Saties, the three gymnastic dances.
The Gymnopédie.
The Gymnopédie. Fabulous. Do you know this?
I think he's played them, but I don't.
Gymnopédie, those are the ones that you always hear, like in the, like in the engagement ring commercials.
Yes. That's right.
Yeah.
That's right. Very fine. Fine French. Yeah. And then,
it's like, would you? This is 2 months' salary. You better say yes.
That's right. Aldo Ciccolini, fabulous pianist, would do some of Satie's work, and I encountered him in high school. I mean, the record. So I started buying records. And that's how I amassed the present collection.
Eric Satie's sheet music, by the way, if you see his sheet music, he writes these absolutely absurd instructions to the pianist. Like it'll say above a certain passage of music, it'll say, with clairvoyance.
Okay,
It's anyone's guess what that means.
Yeah, you better be a psychic if you're going to play.
Right, you better predict what's coming on the next page, right?
Yeah.
But didn't he do that as kind of a joke or playful?
Definitely.
Yeah.
Definitely. And he didn't have any bar lines. There's no measured lines. You know, hey, a line every 4 beats or whatever.
Okay.
No bar lines at all. But the pieces are very obviously in 4/4. There's nothing really behind the no bar line. It's just, look, I'm being different. You know, being very childlike. It's really endearing. Yeah.
The next one, of course, is the great Tchaikovsky. Piano Concerto No. 1 is one of my favorites, as well as Swan Lake. Ones that are particularly moving to me. One of my favorite pieces, Rachmaninoff, the Piano Concerto 2, and the Rock No. 3, which is a ball breaker, and it separates the men from the boys if you can play the third concerto. Do you remember a film called Shine?
Oh yeah.
Yeah, with
Jeffrey Rush.
Jeffrey Rush.
Yeah.
I thought that was a very fine opportunity to hear that done really well. And finally, Smetana, Love Lost, which is his theme for his country. And again, a particularly moving piece, very subtle, and at other moments very dramatic and bold. So a nice contrast. So these are some of my favorites, but by no means is it exhaustive. I can go on for quite some time, but I thought maybe we better just keep it to within 15.
Sure, and it's a really revealing list. You know?
Oh, okay.
If you gave me 15 things to populate a list with, I would have picked almost everything different. So very, very interesting.
So you're going to look into Telemann.
I will.
Korngold.
Yeah, I will. Yeah. Korngold. I don't know him at all, so that's actually.
Oh wow!
Yeah.
What a treat.
Yes.
And particularly look at his movie soundtracks.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
Let's get a photo of this list.
Definitely.
Yeah.
This is really cool. It's really nice.
It's good.
Yeah. I mean, I could ask you about a few of these, but I also would want to ask you about just being married to an opera singer.
Oh yeah.
And
let's go over that.
Yeah, I'm really interested in terms of maybe the things that you've discovered because of her career.
Sure.
What it's like when she's working on a project, or if you guys have the same taste in music, or if there's things you love that she doesn't like at all. Or any of that kind of stuff.
I can address that. When we met, Leslie was starting her career, so we had a chance to work together on her career. I kept her scrapbooks, wrote a lot of press releases, would travel with her whenever I could, sort of acting as her manager, especially when the opera was over and people would want to come and greet the artists. I would stand in front of Leslie's dressing room so that people couldn't interfere, or special people would be able to enter. But no, you wouldn't let the public in until she's dressed and ready to go out. So little things happened along the way. I got to meet composers. I met Giancarlo Minotti, who was a fabulous composer, and showcased Leslie in The Saint of Bleecker Street. I don't know if you know that.
I've heard of it.
Okay, it's set in New York, and it's the tenements and the street activity of the Italians, kind of like an Italian barrio.
Okay.
And it's all about a love affair between Leslie's character and this really good-looking guy who is enamored of her, and the problems within the city, the problems within the families. It's kind of like a little bit like Romeo and Juliet.
I was about to say West Side Story.
Yeah, West Side
Which of
Story.
course is just Romeo and Juliet.
Yeah, exactly.
In New York with Italians.
Yeah,
anyway,
yeah,
so it's
yeah.
going.
Yeah,
Could it be?
well, Giancarlo did this, I think. Amal and the Night Visitor is one of his big ones.
Okay.
A Christmas piece. But it's very fine music, and the nice thing about meeting the composer was that you got straight information when Leslie would be rehearsing. He might be around, so he would say, "Oh no, director, that's not what I want." So you can get from the horse's mouth, so to speak, a definitive word on what's being done. So those times were really precious. We met Kurt Herbert Adler and worked with him. He was the reigning impresario at SF Opera, and then Terry McEwen, who was a big RCA Victor executive, really knew opera, really knew classical music, and he was appointed to take over for Kurt Herbert. And he was very fond of Leslie, so again, that opened up a lot of doors. And we were hobnobbing with some of the great stars who were in the opera, who Leslie happened to be in the opera with them. So it was always exciting, always on the move. I would say Leslie's taste and my taste are very similar. We tend to go for the Italian operas. We tend to be Verdi and Puccini fans, and Rossini. And Leslie doesn't care for the German operas that much. She's not a Wagnerian fan, although she's sung in some of the Ring operas. She likes French composers, Poulenc in particular. She enjoys, even today, reminiscing about her roles and her scrapbooks, which enable her to revisit, and she's kept a lot of her scores. She can still sing almost every opera that she's been in.
Wow.
Yeah, from memory. And that's pretty impressive.
Yeah.
And the voice is still good.
Wow.
It's still good because she's never indulged in things that would harm the voice. A lot of famous opera singers smoke, and that's really damaging. And yet, you'd be surprised how many do. And a lot of them are seriously functional alcoholics. Without mentioning any names.
Sure.
And these are things that she's avoided in her life. So the voice is still pure. We also found that when we were traveling, we especially wanted to read up. I especially wanted to read up on the opera she was going to be showcasing, so I would know something about it above and beyond just being a spectator. Let's see. She likes classical music as well. Also Beethoven fan. Also like
Chopin apparently.
Chopin,
yeah,
Chopin is very meaningful to us. Rachmaninoff perhaps the most.
Really? Okay.
For the romance.
Yeah.
The romantic music.
Yeah.
Here we are in our white tornado. Tornado? Yeah.
You say tornado, I say tornado.
Yeah. Driving down Highway 1 when we're about your age. Just having a ball, enjoying the coastline, Rachmaninoff playing, and just as a backdrop. And here we are heading down to Laguna Beach, all the southern beaches, and just having a grand old time.
Yeah.
A different hotel every night, 2 weeks to visit family and friends, and just have a nice time. And so it's funny how music you can associate your special times with.
Absolutely.
You know, your favorite dance partner in high school, your first date, someone who had a favorite song, or you shared a favorite song together.
Right.
And so that happens with us. We'll often play classical music at dinner, and I'll say, "Hey, who's that? Don't you should know that one." No, I don't know that one.
Yeah, no,
And
a
then-
lot of these pieces I can remember exactly where I was when I heard it from the
Yeah.
Yeah.
That is so true for so many people.
Yeah.
Recognition. You can almost smell, where you were and remember vividly the picture of that today. Let's see if I'm getting off the track here.
Well, but in terms of when Leslie would be working on a new project, would she rehearse? Would she practice at home, or would she? Because sometimes people go to a practice space. Was it around you a lot when she was working on things?
Yes. Usually when you're hired, you're freelancing all over, wherever you can get work. So even though you're with SF Opera as your starting point, you'll accept a contract anywhere to showcase your talent. So she might be in Europe, maybe I'm with her. So she has to go to rehearsal for 3 weeks, and that's serious. But I can attend and watch the rehearsals, which I often did. And then comes the performance. Maybe she's got 7 nights to do this performance. I would often go backstage and see her come off the wings and